Joining us now for War Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin.
Good morning.
Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Rufai. Welcome back, Rufai. Hey, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank
Good
you
to
for
see
the
you.
gift.
Always a pleasure. Always
lovely,
a pleasure.
Lovely.
Let me tell you all what's happening around the world. Now, the United States and Rwanda have agreed for the African country to accept up to 250 migrants deported from the United States. Now, this agreement between both countries was reportedly signed in the Rwandan capital of Kigali back in June. Now, the Rwandan government say that they've agreed to accept these migrants in part because nearly every Rwandan family has experienced the hardship of displacement, and the country's societal values are founded on reintegration and rehabilitation. Now, Rwanda does have the ability to approve each deportee, and it is believed a list of 10 names has already been sent by the United States to Rwanda for vetting. Now, this is not the first time Rwanda has positioned itself as a sanctuary for migrant deportees. You remember the £700 million UK-Rwanda asylum plan, under which asylum seekers arriving in the United Kingdom would be sent to Rwanda, where they'd be processed under Rwanda's legal system and would not be able to return to the United Kingdom. That plan was scrapped when Keir Starmer came into power in 2024. But it is another example of Rwanda doing the needful when it comes to immigration and deportation thereafter. Now, to Brazil, where the country's Supreme Court has put former right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro under house arrest. Now, Bolsonaro is standing trial over allegations he plotted a coup back in 2022 after losing re-election to current leftist President Lula da Silva. The court ordered he be put on house arrest for violating restraining orders put on him last month by using social media. One of his sons actually used social media and other allies to spread messages that encouraged attacks on the Supreme Court and foreign intervention in the Brazilian judiciary. Now, an example of such flouting the court cited was when pro-Bolsonaro rallies were held in various Brazilian cities on Sunday. One of his sons, Flavio, who is a senator also, he put his father on speakerphone to the crowd in Rio, and later he published a video on Instagram, which he deleted soon after. That video showed his father on the other side of the phone during that phone call, sending a message to his supporters. Now, the court went on to say that such moves were encouraging the likes of Donald Trump to interfere with the case. As we know, the US president imposed a 50% tariff on some Brazilian goods, despite having a trade surplus with the South American country. And finally, less than 2 months ahead of his sentencing, US music mogul Sean Diddy Combs has been denied release from prison on a $50 million bond. It's the fifth time Combs has been denied bail. This denial was due to him being a risk of flight or danger, according to the judge. The ruling does come days after Combs' ex-girlfriend, Virginia Gina Hoon, who was referred to as victim 3 in his indictment, wrote a letter in support of him to the New York judge asking for Combs to be released on bail. Now, he will be sentenced on the 3rd of October for his conviction of transportation to engage in prostitution. By the sentencing date, though, Combs would have spent more than a year in jail, which will be credited to his ultimate sentence. Now, he does face a maximum of 20 years in prison. Those are your stories. Love to hear your thoughts before we move on to the papers.
Okay. Let me quote what Vimbai likes to hear. François de la Rochefoucauld for the Upton Times says, hypocrisy is the homage vice pays to virtue. I mean, I can't say enough of that word because I see a lot of hypocrisy. With this man called Mr. Paul Kagame in it, I laugh at him a lot. He said, they are receiving migrants because they love to help people. People have been displaced.
Yes, every Rwandan has been affected by displacement and they understand rehabilitation. It's a lie?
It's a big lie. What about the people that have been displaced in South Kivu, North Kivu, and Ituri by the activities of the M23 flood, the Congo, that he supports? There are over 7 million people that are internally displaced in Congo. Over 80% of them are due to the activities of M23. Why hasn't Paul Kagame opened his doors for them to come? Because they love to take in IDP and displaced people. You can see I just twatted his logic there, and it's all lies. So these guys get very hypocritical. But you see, the truth of the matter is, he's cozying up to America today because he wants America to side with him as he constantly perpetrates crimes against humanity with the M23 against the Congolese. That's why he's doing this. And for any country that gives him money, just like the UK that gave him about $700 million, he wants it. At some point, he had collected migrants from Israel. So why is he always collecting migrants from developed nations that have financial capacity, Israel, America, and the likes? The internally displaced people he is also making every day by M23, why is he not collecting them as migrants if he truly has a heart of helping? Hypocrisy. Just like the same hypocrisy Trump is doing with Brazil now. Anyway, I'm not surprised. Again, Vimbai, hypocrisy is the homage vice pays to virtue. About 2 years before, Trump did the same thing Bolsonaro did. 6th of January. Elections didn't go his way. He caused anarchy and disruption in the land. But the full wrath of the law wasn't meted out against him because America has their own problem and they are always very divided along political lines. 2 years after, 2 days after, 8th of January, Bolsonaro lost an election and he started this insurrection. Now, Trump is supporting Bolsonaro because he committed the same criminal act. Two men that cannot accept that you can either win or lose in an election. Then Bolsonaro starts to blackmail everybody, blackmail the judges and everything, while they're trying to put a case against him, despite the fact that, and Bolsonaro is so delusional, that he forgets that ministers that served in his own cabinet have testified against him already. His aides have testified against him.
Yeah.
But he continues with the hypocrisy.
We'll see. Thank you, Rufai.
Okay, I'll focus on Rwanda this morning, which is an unsurprising development, if I may say so, especially given Rwanda's track record with wanting to engage in these types of transactions. Now, the concerns in the past when Rwanda was in negotiations with the UK were issues around human rights abuses. Now, it's very difficult to find evidence or statistics of this because we know that Rwanda is quite should we say, a very well-managed PR environment. So there are accusations and allegations. There's some political opponents and opposition leaders who are said to have been assassinated by the administration in South Africa and so forth. But all of it kind of lives in the realm of speculation, and sometimes the Rwandese officials will even make you feel like it's conspiracy. However, of course, we know that we have a president who has been there for decades and who in the last election won with a 99% of the vote and almost 100% voter turnout. So that tells you a lot about Rwanda. However, when you look at the human rights concerns and the allegations around Rwanda that they can be heavy-handed, I think it translates to the crime statistics. The crime statistics say that Rwanda is one of the safest countries in Africa. Where am I going with this? I'm going to the fact that Rwanda and the United States are not disclosing the caliber of the deportees that are being admitted into Rwanda. Now, we know that with Eswatini and South Sudan, it was the most violent criminals and the most undesirables, if I may call it that. The statements from the United States and from Rwanda have been very clear to leave out any information with regards to what type of deportees they will be accepting. I believe there's a provisional list of 10 people already that has been shared. But again, no real information. Like with Eswatini, we had names and faces. So maybe it will happen when they arrive on Rwandese soil. However, there's an Iraqi who has been identified who that leaked through a diplomatic communique. Now, these people are not going into detention in Rwanda. Unlike Eswatini and South Sudan, they will not be hosted in Rwandese prisons. Rwanda says they are going to rehabilitate these people and make them active members of society.
Yes, that was also the case with the United Kingdom. They were never going to punish
with the United
Kingdom.
No, yes. I'm not speaking on the United States now.
Yes, I'm talking about the actual accommodation that was built. It was never supposed to be rehabilitation along the lines of punishment.
Exactly.
Like that.
However, the case is different because the UK was not deporting criminals. The United States is deporting some of their most violent criminals who are not wanted by their own countries. So that's why I'm trying to differentiate between the caliber of people who are coming out of the United States? We don't know. But that's why I'm connecting it to the human rights abuses that Rwanda is accused of having. Because if they're not going into prison, if they're going into the Hope hostels that were built in Kigali, intended for the deportees from the United Kingdom, are we going to have a crime problem brewing in this region? Are they going to be able to keep them, controlled? Are we now going to really understand the heavy-handedness of the police system of Rwanda when you now have Venezuelan gang members, you name it, Iraqi suspected terrorists in there? Is going to be a true test for the system.
Kagame is collecting money, don't worry.
The issue here
sorted.
is what is called third-party deportation,
Yes.
which was approved by a federal court in the United States in support of President Donald Trump's deportation, anti-immigration decisions. Now, you recall that El Salvador was the first to receive deportees from the US, from Venezuela, and also from El Salvador, and they were put in prison. The United States paid $6 million for that. So this is a background to that. They also wanted to send people to South Sudan. US also wanted to send people to Nigeria. And our Minister of Foreign Affairs famously said that we are already over 200 million people here. We don't want any additional people being deported from the United States. First, the context. In the case of Rwanda, this is not the first time that Rwanda is providing itself as a safe haven for deportees. Now, in 2019, they took deportees from Libya to Rwanda. Number two, in 2022, they signed an asylum deal for deportees with the United Kingdom. But 2 years later, in 2024, when Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, that was cancelled, in part because lawyers and activists across Europe said that this was a violation of the EU Convention on Human Rights. And that was why that process failed in the lower parliament and the upper parliament of the United Kingdom. Now, the US comes along, approaching 15 African countries. There are 15. Eswatini, South Sudan, and also Rwanda, to say, look, we will deport people to your country, but they will pay. They will, provide the logistics. So it was in that context that Rwanda says, yes, this is a place for rejects of the world. We will take them, but we don't know the amount. We don't know the identity of the persons to be deported, but 10 of them will be deported in the next few days. Now, where there is a twist in the tale is that the US is mediating between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda over the crisis in the eastern part of the DRC. And there will be a meeting next month. Both leaders, the leader of DRC, the leader of Rwanda, they are both expected to visit the United States. But also there's power relations. Some of these smaller, weaker countries try to suck up to bigger countries as a diplomatic means of improving relations and protecting themselves in other ways. However, we all know very clearly that Trump is interested in resources, mineral resources, and DRC is very rich, and I think they also have some resources in Rwanda. Now, to go very quickly to Jair Bolsonaro. Jair Bolsonaro was known as the Trump of the tropics. He's a fan, an ally, of President Trump since his first time in office as President of the United States. So you see Trump, relying on that politics to say, you are doing politics with Bolsonaro. This is a case of injustice. And he cited the trial of Bolsonaro as the reason for imposing 50% tariff on Brazil. And Brazil says, no, we're a sovereign country. Do not interfere in our domestic affairs. So it's on the basis of all of this that Justice Alexandre de Moraes of the Supreme Court of Brazil has now said, okay, we have given you restraining order, you, Jair Bolsonaro, You are not respecting it because you think you have political and economic power. Now, we have decided to place you under house arrest.
Yes.
Indefinitely. Okay. You cannot use phone. You cannot receive visitors. The only visitors you can receive are lawyers and also whoever the Supreme Court authorizes to come and meet you. So that's the situation. So at the diplomatic level, there's tension between the U.S. and Brazil, with Marco Rubio saying that Jair Bolsonaro is being victimized. Well, and the report that you give, the main issue is that Jair Bolsonaro violated the restraining order by making phone calls
during those
and by receiving visitors and by instigating the United States against the Republic of Brazil.
Thank you, Dr. Rubin. Let's move on to newspaper headlines across Nigeria. We begin, of course, with the front page of This Day. This Day does lead with the All Progressives Congress calling the opposition African Democratic Congress and the former Kaduna State Governor, Nasir El-Rufai, confused and clueless. The ruling party is accusing the ADC of moving to disrupt the presidential rotational principle by the reported imposition of Atiku Abubakar as the party's presidential candidate. Now, the ADC has hit back, accusing the APC of weaponizing personal attacks. Now, This Day's picture headline does show the presidential reception for our women's Afro-basket champions, the Tigresses, who have received national honors, $100,000 each, and a flat each also. Now, the story is also the lead on the Vanguard this morning, of course, the champions there too. Now, The Advocate by Onikepo Braithwaite, which is This Day's weekly legal news insert, this week's edition looks at the insincerity of the present-day politician. Now, Braithwaite's piece is entitled 2027, Beyond Ethnic and Regional Ambush. And in it, she says that no leader or politician of today can be compared to Nigeria's founding fathers, including Ahmadu Bello, Michael Okpara, or Obafemi Awolowo, whom she says were statesmen. Now, more politics does lead the New Telegraph this morning, as Akin Oshutokun says the Southwest will suffer withdrawal symptoms if President Tinubu leaves office in 2027. The paper also picks up on FCT Minister Nyesom Wike sending a message to former Vice President Atiku Abubakar's son, telling him to advise his father against switching parties. Now, the Daily Sun also has lines out of Wike's media parley, where he claimed that David Mark was rejected as PDP chairman. And speaking of that chairman seat, The Punch has former Minister of Information Jerry Gana, former party chairman Kawu Baraje, and former Kaduna Governor Ahmed McCarthy all in the running in a so-called tight race to become chairman of the PDP. The Daily Trust leads with news that 61% of students have failed the West African Senior School Certificate exam. Out of the nearly 2 million candidates who sat for the exam across Nigeria and some West African countries which use the Nigerian curriculum, only 38.3% obtained credits in at least 5 subjects, including English language and mathematics, which is, of course, the benchmark for university, college, or polytechnic admission. This implies that 1.2 million candidates may be ineligible this year to go into tertiary institutions. Now, the WAEC has also withheld the results of more than 190,000 candidates for fraud and for the non-payment of fees from 2 states which were not named. Staying with the theme of education, The Guardian reports that Nigerians planning a trip to the United States may soon be required to pay as much as $15,000 upfront as the US government revives a controversial visa bond policy targeting travelers from countries with high visa overstay rates. The Trump administration is moving ahead with this 12-month pilot program, which will allow US consular officers to demand a refundable visa bond ranging from $5,000 to $15,000 from applicants seeking to visit the United States for business or tourism. Now, that policy is set to take effect from the 20th of August, and several African nations, including Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Angola, are expected to be affected. Now, one of the stories along the bottom of the Daily Independent is that the US mission in Nigeria did issue a warning that students who skip classes, drop out, or leave their academic programs without notifying their schools risk their student visas being revoked and the loss of eligibility for future visa applications. There's also more criticism of this 712 billion naira price tag for the renovation of Terminal 1 of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos. Those are your papers.
Okay. Well, no comment.
Okay. I would have wanted to comment on this 15,000 naira bond.
Go ahead, very quickly.
There isn't enough.
We don't have time. No worries.
All right, Adefemi, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
For that. All right.